Welcome to the Jazz Notes podcast. I'm your host, Ben Anderson.
I'm Chandler Holt.
We are recording this on Tuesday, August 13th. Can't believe we're already at mid-August. This is when the NBA season really slows down. Find us on Twitter at Ben's Hoops, at C Holt Sports, and at KSL Sports. You can read us at KSLSports.com, and then the social medias for KSL Sports. It's just KSL Sports. Threads, Twitter, X, Facebook, TikTok. What am I missing? I think that's everything. Yep. So anywhere, Instagram.
Yep. Definitely
follow us, and you'll get all of our coverage there as well. All right, it's been a very busy week for the Utah Jazz since we last talked. We didn't even have the official deal that the Jazz were signing Lauri yet, unless it came out that morning.
No, I think we didn't have the official numbers yet.
So it is official. The Jazz have re-signed Lauri Markkanen. It was what we had said was going to happen basically all summer. I know there had been trade talks. Nothing ever felt substantial. Nothing ever felt close, and it never felt like there was that, oh, the Jazz are really going to have to think about that. You know, had Houston come out and said, well, we want to give you Alperen Şengün and all of our draft picks and another young player or whatever salaries to match, I think you have to listen. Mm-hmm. There was never the player out there. I think there was draft capital out there in trade talks for Lauri. Jazz have draft picks.
Yep.
They've got all the draft picks they need. I think it would have taken players, and I'm not sure the willingness to include players in these deals ever got close.
Yeah, I don't think that the Warriors, there was a rumor that came out that the Warriors were only comfortable with throwing Moody in, but the Jazz wanted both AirPods and Kuminga in a trade, and we don't know exactly what that deal looks like.
Yeah, why would the Jazz trade Lauri Markkanen for Moses Moody?
Yeah.
Like you get Moses Moody for Kelly Olynyk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's the type of trade you try and make there. With all due respect to Moses Moody, who might turn out to be a fine player and might just be buried in Golden State, he also might just not be a good player. Mm-hmm. So trading a really good player for that level doesn't make any sense. And again, I think it's important to revisit this, not to get too lost in this conversation, but when we look back at the Rudy Gobert trade and the Donovan Mitchell trade, the best assets the Jazz have gotten back in that are still Lauri Markkanen and Colin Sexton. It's the actual players they got back.
100%.
We have not. Now, we're really early in the draft picks. Don't get me wrong. I'm not pretending like we know what all these picks are going to turn into. Maybe one of them turns into a Jason Tatum, and that's worked out for Danny Ainge in the past. But the players they have gotten back are better than the draft picks they have gotten back. Pretty simple. Ochai's not on the team anymore. We'll see how long Walker Kessler's around. The Jazz kept him around. He's going to be on the roster to open the season. It certainly seems like we're trending in that direction, but it doesn't seem like anyone would guarantee you that Walker's going to be on the roster in 3 years. So you can move draft picks, you can move young players. Getting proven talent back is really important, and it doesn't seem like anyone really offered that. So the Jazz do keep Lauri Markkanen around. They up his contract to $42 million this season from 18, so a hefty raise for Lauri Markkanen. Year one of his extension, which starts next season, not this season, $46 million, $46 million, $49 million, and finally $53 million. Not really any major discounts for the Jazz. He could have gotten a little bit more money if he really wanted to go full max, but the Jazz saved about half as much money as they gave him in the raise this season.
Yeah, and we were talking about how it might be a good idea for the Jazz to front-load the contract, give him most of the money early, and then have it sort of die down later in the contract like they did with Jordan Clarkson, but it didn't end up being like that. But I still don't think that it's a big deal or it'll really end up handicapping the Jazz that much because of the CBA. Teams are going to have so much more money to spend in the upcoming years.
And Lauri's really good.
Yep.
It's not I wrote about this last week. There's what I call the best player tax, which is like teams just pay their best player max money because they're like, well, you're the best player on our team. It's like, well, does your team stink? Why are you paying that guy $50 million if you're bad and he's your best player? And with all due respect, like this is kind of what happens with John Collins.
Yep.
John Collins was coming out of his rookie year or his rookie contract, was good. He's a good player. And they were like, well, I guess we just got to pay our young players as much as we can give them. So they gave him a max contract, and as soon as they signed it, they had him on the trade block. They're just like, how do we get rid of this deal? That is not the case with Lauri. You are not now looking how to unload Lauri Markkanen. You can still trade him up starting next summer, but you're absolutely fine paying these numbers.
Yes.
So happy to have Lauri around if you're a Jazz fan. Again, I think last Tuesday was a good day to be a Jazz fan. It was a really good thing. You have a player who is the archetype of what stars look like in the NBA. He has the greatest skill that you need and the best physical asset that you need, which is great shooter, and he's super tall.
Yep.
And he's very athletic. Perfect. Give me that player every time. And you've got him inked now for 5 more years, this year and 4 on top of it. It's a good spot to be in. Those are the types of players you want to have, and Lauri Markkanen is the face of the Utah Jazz for the time being.
Speaking of contracts, the Jazz made a few more moves. We heard about the signing of Eubanks and Juzang a week ago, or even earlier than that, but became official this week. And also, they signed Svatoslav Mikhailuk and Kyle Filipowski. Eubanks is on a 2-year, just under $10 million deal, with the second year not being guaranteed. Juzang at 4-year, $12 million, only the first year guaranteed. And then Svi Mikhailuk, 4-year, $15 million, which I think is a kind of a good payday for him, considering what the start of his NBA career has looked like.
Yeah.
Granted, he's a shooter, and that is the hottest commodity in the NBA right now. And then Kyle Filipowski, I also think this is interesting. 4-year, $12 million. And if you look at that, that's sort of like a contract for like a pick in the 20s, not a second-round pick.
He's making more than Isaiah Collier, who was a first-round draft pick. But that is some of the advantage of being the 32nd overall pick, and why we weren't lying when we said, when the Jazz traded Simone Fontecchio for that 32nd overall pick, we said, like, that's kind of more valuable than a first. Yeah. You can negotiate the contract. You can get good players. There's a good spot. It's advantageous to be there. It actually turned out to be more advantageous for Flip than to get drafted in the first round. He got more money. Now, it's not guaranteed for 4 years.
Yes.
That's where Collier has a little bit of an advantage. It's easier to guarantee his lower cost. But even then, the Jazz don't have to guarantee him after 2 years. That's when you start extending qualifying offers, and Jazz don't have to extend qualifying offers. I think after 2 years, and if you're a rookie. I could be wrong. Maybe it's a year longer than that. But a good investment for Flip. But you said Svi Mikhailuk's full first name. It's the only time anyone will ever hear it. You're the only person who's ever said it. But yeah, kind of interesting moves. I did not see Mikhailuk coming in. It is not a coincidence that he and Lauri Markkanen have the same agent, and those are the only NBA players he represents. Like Tony Snell is one of his agents, but Tony Snell's out of the NBA. All the rest of his guys, I think, are out of the NBA as well. There was, I don't want to say shenanigans, but it's not a coincidence that one agent got 2 players on the same team after getting Lauri paid. There's some work being done there. So pretty interesting. Interesting deals. All of them are partially guaranteed. They're fully guaranteed this first year. Drew Eubanks, 2 years. Only the first year of his deal is guaranteed, just under $10 million. Johnny Juzang, 4 years, $12 million, as you mentioned. Only the first year of his deal guaranteed. Mikhailuk the same way. The final 3 years all non-guaranteed. And then Flip, the first 2 years. I wouldn't put Flip in this conversation. You're not going to try and trade him. Yeah. I think they quite like him. But yeah, all those guys are basically forever expiring contracts. If you want to bring them back another year, they continue to be expiring contracts and tradable pieces that you can patch together to match salaries. It's just kind of smart front office work to get a $3 million guy, a $4 million guy, and a $5 million guy, and then put them together, combine all 3 of them, 1 of them, 2 of them, whatever, or throw them in with, John Collins or whatever you got to do when you're making these types of trades, or Jordan Clarkson or whoever you look to move. It makes those moves easier to make. That's why you sign these guys. And then one more move. The Jazz waived Tavion Kinsey and signed Oscar Tshiebwe. Unfortunately, Tavion Kinsey just can't make it to the regular season. He signed a 10-day deal with the Jazz. Actually got waived before the end of a 10-day, which I'd never seen before. It didn't even expire, and didn't get onto the floor in the regular season. And then, again, signed a 2-way with the Jazz in the summer, played the Summer League, and got waived before in favor of rebounding superstar Oscar Tshiebwe. He really is, he might be the best rebounder in the world.
Yeah.
That's what he does. He is awesome at it. He averaged 16 a game in college or 14 a game in college. He was 16 a game in the G League last year. He is a absolute freakish rebounder. And as we've seen from Kawhi Leonard, Boardman gets paid.
Yep.
And that's who Oscar Tshiebwe is. So I don't expect him to play. He's a 2-way guy, but will be an asset for the Stars.
You know what I love in the NBA? I love specialists that aren't shooting specialists.
Yeah.
Like rebounding specialists, like Rondo, playmaking specialists. I love those kinds of players who can just fill a very specific role.
You know who loves rebounding specialists? Every coach on the planet. Every coach is just like, you know what? I know you want to score. Of course you want to shoot the basketball. Everyone wants to dribble and shoot. Go get me a rebound, because that means the possession is ours. That means we've ended a possession. If you can get a rebound, I will really like you. And that's why Oscar Tshiebwe is going to continue to stick around in the NBA. He's a little bit older. He's 25, or going to turn 25, I think, in November. So when the season starts, he's going to be a bit of an older player. He's not exactly young, and played 4 years of college and played last year on a 2-way with the Indiana Pacers. But, a specialist. And I have a soft spot for those guys as well.
All right, you want to go into a break?
Yeah, let's take a quick break. We will come back and we'll get to your mailbag. Not a ton of Jazz news today, but excited to have something. But we'll get to your mailbag questions coming up next. Stick around. More Jazz notes. Welcome back to the Jazz Notes podcast. We should note quickly the Noteworthy documentary is out for the Utah Jazz. If you have Jazz Plus, it's already available. By the time you're listening to this, most likely 5 p.m. Tuesday, it will be out on YouTube.
Yes.
I watched it as somebody who grew up in Salt Lake and did a lot of 50th anniversary coverage last year, including ranking the 50 best players in Jazz history. I felt like, oh man, this is a weird time for this to come out. The season's over. Jazz buzz is not super high right now. I know all these stories. If you lived in Utah, you know these stories. This is going to be a bit of a slog to watch because it's 98 minutes long. It's not a quick burn through. I was shocked at how much I enjoyed it. Honestly, I was like really, really surprised at how good it was, how well made it is, how thorough it is in its storytelling. It's pretty honest about what the Jazz have been historically, highs and lows. They cover some of the bad parts of the team. Frank Layden not being able to get along with Adrian Dantley and maybe that being a mistake that they traded him because they had egos and didn't ever keep he and John and Carl together. That was a whiff. That's a Hall of Fame player. You could have had 3 Hall of Fame players on your roster. Talk about losing in the finals and what that felt like. And they talk about trading Darren Williams after Jerry Sloan got run out of town, essentially, or pushed him into retirement.
Yeah.
They cover those things and they don't gloss over them. And I think they actually add a little bit of new nuance and some news that you maybe haven't realized, or you see pieces of information that maybe you'd forgotten. So I actually felt like I learned something from it. So if you're a Jazz fan, I would honestly recommend watching it. I wouldn't say that to everybody, and I would tell you if it wasn't good. I would tell you if it wasn't. But they did a really nice job.
So yeah, make sure to check that out. Like you said, today, Tuesday, August 13th, it'll be available at 5 p.m. on the Jazz YouTube.
Also, Easter egg. If you listen to this podcast, you might hear something familiar to open the documentary.
Yes, the first voices.
A couple of voices very familiar to you. Open the documentary, which was a surprise to me.
Yes,
and was very
that was awesome.
Flattering, to be honest with you. So also shout out to them. That's not why I'm endorsing it, but that was flattering. All right, let's get to the mailbag. As always, find me on Twitter at Ben's Hoops every Tuesday around 11 o'clock. I send out a tweet asking for your Utah Jazz and NBA questions. You reply there, and we will answer them on the podcast and an ensuing article at KSL Sports. What do we have?
All right, first up from Utah Jazz News. If we get a top 5 pick this next year, for example, let's say we get Cooper Flagg, do you think we buy another star to play alongside Lauri and Flagg and the said star, or would we tank again in 2026?
It depends on what happens with John Collins, really. He's got $25 million. He's got a $25 million player option after this season. So going into the 2025-26 season, he's got a $25 million deal, which I would bet he picks up. But again, I've talked about it quite a lot. I don't think it's a guarantee.
Yeah.
John Collins is pretty good. He's going to be in his late 20s. He's going to want another longer payday. And if he has a good season this year with the salary cap going up and some teams having some free agency money, like somebody might be willing to bet on John Collins. Someone might be willing to say, hey, John, like you played well last year. Let's say he averages 15-8 or 18-8 with the Jazz. Like he was much better the second half of the season. Again, I think it's important to remember that. And he's going into his second year with the Jazz. If he, gets a little bit of familiarity, Jazz learn how to use him a little bit better, and he closes the season well or plays the season well, which again, once he moved to center, I thought he was pretty good for the Jazz, especially the second half of the season, the way they started to utilize him and his rebounding came back. He could opt out and try and get, 3 years and $60 million from somebody and say, well, that's better than the 25 the Jazz are giving me because I'd rather just have the long-term guaranteed money, even if it's a little bit short of what my first-year deal was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. But if he opts out, that's $25 million off the books. The Jazz can waive Drew Eubanks, Johnny Juzang, Svi Mikhailuk. That's another 12-ish, 11-ish million dollars off. Well, 25 and 11 is $36 million bucks, potentially in salary cap space that you could create. Now, you'll have rookies coming in and stuff. You're not going to have total money, but you could have close to $30 million bucks in free agency space. So let's say you have Cooper Flagg or whoever it is, VJ had come or whatever the player is, and that much money, go get another star. You might be able to start winning now, and I could see that happening.
This is something that I thought about. Cooper Flagg, he's going to come in, I assume, as like a 3-4 kind of hybrid forward. And the Jazz already got two of the guys a lot like that in the last 2 drafts, in Cody Williams and Taylor Hendricks. Do you think that maybe the Jazz will take a shot at one of the other top 3-5 guys if they are there, or do you think it's just Cooper Flagg if you can get him? Of course, it's speculation as of right now.
Sure. I want to see, I guess, what these other guys do. Like, everyone's saying Cooper Flagg's the guy. I totally get it. It was Victor and Scoot Henderson, and nobody was ever talking about Brandon Miller, and Brandon Miller is a better player than Scoot. He just is. So it does one of these players, because it's a good draft class overall. Again, it's not just Cooper and everybody else. It's actually a really good class. Let's see if somebody jumps up. Let's see if somebody out of nowhere is way better than we expected, and maybe even outperforms Cooper Flagg, who is not a great offensive player yet. Good passer, great defensive player, but isn't like the go-to scorer. And some team might say, like, well, there's a star scorer, and scoring is the most important goal in the NBA. And that's why it's called the field goal. It's what you're trying to do. If you can do that, maybe you could jump Cooper Flagg and find a better fit for the Jazz. But they would gladly take Cooper Flagg if he's there. Speaking quickly on John Collins, here's what I'll say. His last 27 games of the season for the Jazz, he averaged 17 and 10. He shot 58% from the floor and 40% from three. Guys, if he does that again next year for a full season, he's going to opt out. 17 and 10 on 58 and 40. Like, whether he's helping you win or not, because he had a negative plus minus, but the Jazz were so bad the last 27 games of the season, he's going to leave. He will, or at least he will opt out. And then you might also be thinking, like, how do you keep John Collins around? Like, if I'm not ruling out the idea that John Collins could figure it out and help the Jazz win some games, in all honesty. I'm not betting on him, like, changing them from being a tanking team next year, but I wouldn't totally rule out the idea that he could, either be a valuable piece, or if he plays that well, he opts out and has some value around the league.
But to answer the question, I think that you're absolutely right. It depends on the veterans not named Lauri Markkanen in terms of if the Jazz would buy for another star.
But I don't think the Jazz tank 2 more years.
No.
Unless they trade Lauri next summer, I don't think they tank 2 more years. I think that would be difficult to do.
Next up from Josh Chisholm, do you think Cody Williams could play some shooting guard next to Keontae? A Keontae and Cody backcourt is really intriguing to me.
He is a little bit better ball handler than I expected. He's not a great playmaker. He had one game, I think, with 4 or 5 assists in the summer league. Otherwise made some mistakes there. He gets places off the dribble in a way I didn't know he could do, which you have to be able to do if you're a shooting guard. You have to be able to dribble. And so that's helpful. I still doubt it.
Yeah.
I still kind of doubt it. I just don't think he's not quite that wiggly yet. You know, again, we've talked about him being really, like, slithery, but I'm not sure he's got that, like, get the ball, go out in transition, fly up the court, be super quick, which I kind of think you generally want from your guards. And by the way, is a strength that the Jazz have. Keontae's fast. Colin Sexton's really fast. Jordan Clarkson's fast. Those guys can get out and run. Like, as many minutes as the Jazz right now have at the 2, I'm not sure that they artificially put Cody there if they don't have to.
Yeah.
I think he gets a lot of minutes at the 3, maybe some backup minutes at the 2, but most of his minutes, I think, come at small forward.
Next up, Kenyon John asks, how are we going to tank with Lauri Markkanen?
By playing all the rest of the players on the team. Having the rest of, you know how you do it? Your offseason signings are Drew Eubanks and Svi Mikhailiuk.
Yeah.
Like, that's what the Jazz chose this offseason. Again, it's really important to remember how good Kelly Olynyk and Simone Fontecchio were, and by losing them and not replacing them with real NBA players, how much you lose. How much you lose by getting rid of 2 rotation guys. And again, going back 2 years where a lot of this consternation about can the Jazz tank or not goes back to the Victor Wembanyama year. It's like, man, in retrospect, you started that season with Mike Conley, Lauri Markkanen, Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley. Walker Kessler was way better than anybody expected. Kelly Olynyk, maybe I touched on him already. Like, you had a good roster.
Yeah.
You actually just had a pretty good roster of players. I'm not pretending it was a championship roster, but yeah, of course that team wasn't going to win 18 games. Like, in retrospect, that team was way too good for that. This team doesn't have Kelly Olynyk or Malik Beasley or Jared Vanderbilt or, Simone Fontecchio was a rookie. I know he didn't play a whole lot. Just like all of those things are gone now. And that team still had Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton. Like, what am I talking? I'm missing 2 of the better players on that roster entirely. Like, that team legitimately had 9 NBA players. Like, rotation level NBA players that were ready to go without recognizing that Walker Kessler was going to be an all-rookie first-team player. So you strip all that away and you replace it with first-year Cody Williams, first-year Kyle Filipowski, second-year Taylor Hendricks, second-year Bryce Sensabaugh, second-year Keontae George. It's like, that's how you lose a lot of games.
Yeah.
So you just play your young guys as much as you want. You undercut your good players by putting them on the floor with young guys trying to learn the ropes, and you let them learn the ropes, and you hope that it helps Bryce Sensabaugh in the long run, and he turns into a guy, or you find out he's not, and you trade him. So that's the easy way to do it.
I think that NBA fans extremely undervalue just quality role players. And like you said, when you replace that with young guys who don't know how to be an NBA player yet, that's how you be bad. I think that, like, going back to 2 years ago when the Jazz won 37 games, if you take away the first half of the year with all the quality role players that they had, I think it's a 20-win team instead of an almost 40-win team.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question. And again, I think, you look at teams around the NBA because tanking is one thing. You also just have to have teams be better than you. And a lot of people are looking at like Detroit and some of these other teams, like how is Toronto going to be better? It's like, well, Toronto has Kelly Olynyk. Like to that point, they have these role players in depth. They have Jakob Poeltl. Like they have enough guys that do know how to play that they're going to accidentally win 28 games, and then can the Jazz manufacture winning fewer than that? Detroit has, again, Tobias Harris, Cade Cunningham, who's actually just a good player. Guys like Paul Reed matter. Like, they just help you win games. So I think that's something to keep an eye on, and some of these teams have the intention clearly to get better. And I don't expect Washington to be good, but again, they've got Jonas Valanciunas, they've got Malcolm Brogdon, they've got Kyle Kuzma. Like, you've just got enough basketball knowledge. Jordan Poole has a bounce-back year after an atrocious first season. Like, okay, all of a sudden it could come together and they could be decent.
Yeah. Next up from Denny B. Karchner, do the Jazz currently have a player who could be the next Simone Fontecchio?
I think that's the hope for either Svi Mykhailiuk or Johnny Juzang.
Okay.
Johnny might be young enough that you just hold on to him. Great.
Yeah.
If he's, you got him up for 4 years. Again, if the Jazz had Simone for 4 seasons under contract, they would have kept him. Mm-hmm. It's been talked about a lot, but it's like, well, as soon as Detroit makes an offer for Simone on a trade, that means they're going to sign him this odd. Like, they're going to chase him in free agency. And in fact, he may have had more free agent suitors had he actually gotten to free agency and not been traded to Detroit, where Detroit had him as a restricted free agent, never knew he was going to resign. And the Jazz didn't want to win games necessarily, and Simone would have helped you do that. But yeah, I think that's the goal. You get shooters in Svi Mykhailiuk or Johnny Juzang, and if there's a good team, specifically Svi, at the trade deadline who just says, hey, man, we could just use one more guy. We could use another shooter with no long-term commitment who's 6'7" and a good athlete and 36% from three, has a championship pedigree. He was on Boston last year and actually played in the finals. Yeah, take that guy. So yeah, you hope it's Simone, and you give him enough opportunities that Svi looks like Simone and is tradable.
Here from Hade or Hade, do you think Jordan Clarkson is on the roster opening night? He seems like someone we should be motivated to move, to lose more games, and give minutes to the young guys.
I guess Occam's razor would say yes. Like, he's on the team now, so most of the movement in the NBA is done right now. I wouldn't rule it entirely out that a trade could still happen before the season starts, though. The Jazz have less financial flexibility now to take back more money than they're sending out. But again, you've got some different smaller pieces you can move around. Now, you can't trade Drew Eubanks, Mykhailiuk, Juzang, who we just talked about. You can't trade those guys until December 15th, I believe, is when that kind of second window starts to open up that you can make trades after the offseason ends and the regular season starts. So maybe it's more like in that conversation, which is when the Jazz acquired Jordan Clarkson. Remember, they got him on the 23rd of December, I think, if I remember, in 2019. So you could make a move right around then. And if you move Jordan in December, January, he probably hasn't done enough to help you win a lot of games early in the season that it's a huge difference. Yeah.
Next up from Riley O'Brien, how certain do you feel that the Jazz are picking top 3 this upcoming year, or are at least projected to have a top 3 pick before the lottery? Side note, your podcast is fantastic. For me, I don't...
Thank you, Riley.
Yes, thank you. I don't think that top 3 is a lock. I do think that top 5 is a lock. Because I feel confident at least that like the Wizards and the Brooklyn Nets are going to be worse than the Jazz are.
Yep.
But then from there, it's like, will Chicago be worse?
Charlotte.
Yeah, Charlotte.
Portland. Yeah.
Portland. But yeah, I think that top 5 for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is, like, the NBA has made it so you don't feel comfortable that you're ever going to draft top 3. You've got, a 25% chance or 14? It's like 14%. It's just crazy. It's just all these limited, it's 14%, 14%, 14%. Then you have a really good chance, even if you have the worst record, that you draft 5th, which is why the Pistons keep drafting 5th. So, yeah, not confident at all. But am I confident the Jazz are going to have a top 10 pick? Basically 100%. Yes. And then 6, 7 in that range, like still at like 95%. And then, 5, you start to get a little dicey. Like, is it 28 wins? Is it 16 wins? Like, is there a 16-win team out there this year? I kind of don't feel like it. And we've seen that the last few years. That's what Detroit was doing. I don't think they're, a team lost 29 games in a row. Like, that's crazy. We're not going to see that again. Maybe Charlotte just doesn't show up at all. And if LaMelo gets hurt early, they could be in the running for that. Or he's healthy and Brandon Miller's good. Like, all these teams have kind of these options. Again, look at Portland. Back to our original conversation, just like having guys who know how to play basketball. Like, Shaedon Sharp's now going into his third year. If Scoot Henderson has any type of jump and Jeremy Grant plays and they've got Time Lord back, like, okay, all of a sudden you've got 8 guys who can play.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Anthony Simons never wants to win a game, and doesn't have the young – they have young players, don't get me wrong, but they don't even have as many young players as the Jazz do that, like, you have to play.
Yep.
You don't have to play Duop Wraith if you're Portland. He was fun last year. He was a good story. Tamani Kamara was a cool story coming over from Portland. But, like, you're going to play DeAndre Ayton.
Yep.
You're going to play some of these guys, Time Lord. You're going to play some of your draft picks that might actually be helping you win sooner. So I wouldn't rule out the Jazz necessarily even being better than Portland, though that seems to be the consensus nationally. I'm not sure I'm totally on board with that, though I understand the edge. So no, top 3, not guaranteed. Top 5 or 6, 75%, 7 or 8, like 95%.
Yep, I think that's perfect. Next up from Jazz Time Jones, is Drew Eubanks just a human trade exception? Seems like an opportunity to flip him at the deadline.
A little, except for the Jazz aren't necessarily a human trade exception team. And to redefine what this is, teams that were in the luxury tax or the tax aprons signed their own players that they had their bird rights on, which your bird rights allow you to sign players even if you're over the salary cap, which is what it's named after Larry Bird because they wanted to keep him and they didn't have salary cap room. And they said, well, if it's your own player, you can go above the salary cap to re-sign him. When you have those guys and you're a team like the Phoenix Suns, you can choose to re-sign your players basically at an artificially high price because when you're over the luxury tax or you're in the tax apron, it's really hard to make any type of trade. It basically has to be exactly dollar for dollar or you have to take less money back. Well, the higher salary your guy has, the more players that are in the league that make less than him that you could take back in a trade. So you go out and you give just an average player way too much money knowing that you could trade him on an expiring contract to get somebody back. So Josh Okogie, for example, probably an NBA minimum quality player.
Yep.
Maybe $3 or $4 million. They give him like $8 million, and now he's eligible to be traded for anybody who makes $8 million or less as opposed to $4 million or less. That's the human trade exception concept. Drew Eubanks is a little bit of that. I think it's more the idea that the Jazz, because they're not over the luxury tax or the salary cap aprons, they can combine those to make a $10 million contract. Again, as we touched on, you do, whatever, 4.75 that he's guaranteed or 5 that he's guaranteed, plus Fee Mikhailuk's 3.5, and you've got $8.5 million, and maybe that's a little bit easier. Or you're not taking so much money back in a trade that either it's not possible to do or you end up over the luxury tax and you put yourself in a bad situation. So, yes, he is signed exclusively to be traded. No, he's not technically a human trade exception, but he's in that. It's the same conversation.
Yes.
It's a little nuanced, but yeah, I think all these guys have been signed, maybe with the exception of Juzang, with the idea that you can move them.
Last question here from Todd Crow. If Zach LaVine is healthy, could we get a pick swap or future protected first along with him, play him 40 games to make sure he stays healthy and still be a bottom 5 to 7 team? If so, why not roll the dice?
Again, I think no.
Yep.
I think going back to, like, if you just have too many players who actually do play okay, you're going to win too many games. Mm-hmm. And, like, I know Zach LaVine's kind of become a joke around the NBA. What was it, 3 years ago he was playing as well as Donovan Mitchell was. Like, yeah. He was cooking a couple of years ago, which is why he got this insane contract. He makes back-to-back All-Star games, 2020, 2021, which, again, was a wonky season coming out of COVID. He averaged, like, 27 points a game. It's just like that guy can score and isn't just on atrocious teams. His teams are middle of the road. He doesn't get you to a top seed in the conference, but he does add 4 wins, 5 wins, which is just far too many for the Jazz right now, even if you were to unload John Collins. So he was really good his 2 All-Star years. Even 2 years ago, he was averaging 24 points a game.
I was about to say 3 years ago, it was a topic in NBA discourse if the best shooting guard in the league is Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell, or Zach LaVine.
Yeah.
So, but Yeah, he's quite a bit removed from that, but he's still a quality player. I don't think that the Jazz are not trying to add talent specifically this year.
And the problem with Zach LaVine is just like it's a terrible roster. It's a terrible run organization.
Yeah.
Like the fear, and I guess maybe the upside there is if you trade for him, okay, maybe you're buying really low on a player who's actually pretty good, but if you get a player who's consistently hurt, which has been an issue for Zach LaVine, and he's 29 now or going to turn 29, and those injuries start to stack up, when the athleticism goes a little bit, you lose quite a bit of the player, and then you still win too many games. So I think the Jazz are done for the most part. Yeah, if somebody came knocking for Jordan Clarkson, it was an opportunity to lose more games and maybe get a draft pick back or something, or a second-round pick, I think the Jazz would explore it. They still do have a roster spot open, which I think they will maintain and see who gets waived, what type of opportunities happen during camps, because teams are going to make really difficult decisions to waive some players to get under the luxury tax, I think, or do as much as they can to trim their roster down. And the Jazz might be willing to pick up some of those players on waivers or just sign them as free agents. I could see the Jazz maintaining some flexibility and leaving a roster spot open to do it, but I don't think there's a big move coming between now and October 4th when the season opens.
Thank you guys for tuning into the Jazz Notes podcast. Make sure to keep your eyes on Ben's and I's Twitter, Ben's Hoops and C Holt Sports. In the upcoming weeks, we may put out a tweet if we're going to miss an episode or something like that. It's going to be the slowest month of NBA basketball. But if you don't see anything from us, make sure to come back on Tuesdays and you will see the new episode.
Yeah, subscribe, and we'll just get delivered right to your phone. So we appreciate everybody who listens. We do have a fun time doing this, and always appreciate the questions. Follow us again on Twitter at Ben's Hoops, at C Holt Sports. Read us everywhere, every day at KSLSports.com. We'll be back with you next week.